Most love stories, the ones you see in movies anyway, start with a man on one knee, holding out a little velvet box containing a very large, very generic diamond. Our love story, or so I thought, began with me, at my mahogany desk on the 34th floor, closing a 7-figure deal and then wiring the money for my own engagement ring. If you've ever been a woman who takes charge of her own life, who believes in a true and equal partnership, maybe a little too much, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You're going to understand this story in your bones. My name is Clara, and I'm good at a few things. I'm good at math. I'm good at seeing the potential in a fledgling company, and I'm very, very good at making money as a venture capitalist. My job was to spot value where others saw risk. I had built my life and my considerable fortune from scratch, on a foundation of hard work and good instincts. My fiancé, Julian, was good at other things. He was good at being a Devereaux, which meant he was good at sailing, at knowing which fork to use, and at wearing a dinner jacket with an air of effortless grace. His family was old money, the kind that had a name on a library wing and a family crest, but whose actual bank accounts were a shadow of their former glory. He was handsome, charming, and utterly perfect. I saw our relationship as the ultimate merger. My new money, his old name, my business acumen, his social grace. We were, I thought, an unstoppable partnership, and I believed he saw it that way too. Which is why, when we decided to get married, the idea of him buying me a ring felt archaic. It felt like a transaction from a bygone era, one where the man provides for the woman. That wasn't us. We were equals. I don't want you to buy me a ring, Julian, I told him one night, over dinner at a restaurant he couldn't really afford. He looked surprised. But darling, it's tradition. We're not a traditional couple, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. We're a modern partnership. I don't need you to provide for me. I want us to build a life together. So, I want to buy my own ring, as a symbol, my investment in us. A strange look flickered across his face, a mixture of relief and something else, something I couldn't quite read, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual charming smile. Darling, that is so you, he said, his voice smooth as silk, so powerful, so modern. I love it. He laughed. A light, airy sound. Well, that certainly saves me the trouble, doesn't it? I thought his joke was sweet and self-deprecating. I didn't realize then that it was a confession of his own insecurity. I was so in love. I was blind to the red flags that were practically waving in my face. I didn't want a generic diamond from a chain store in a mall. I wanted something with a story, something with a soul. And I found it at a little shop in the city's historic district called Heirloom Jewels. Heirloom Jewels was a place out of time. It was a tiny, family-owned store, run by a kind, elderly man named Mr. Abernathy, whose grandfather had opened the shop in 1922. The place smelled of old velvet and silver polish. The display cases were filled not with the loud, flashy diamonds of modern jewelry, but with unique, intricate pieces from decades past, each one with its own secret history. And in a dusty velvet box in the back of a display case, I found my ring. It wasn't a massive diamond. It was a vintage, one-of-a-kind Art Deco piece from the 1930s. At its center was a deep, sapphire blue emerald-cut sapphire. It was surrounded by a geometric halo of small, glittering diamonds, set in an impossibly intricate platinum band. It wasn't loud. It was elegant. It was unique. It was a ring for a woman who knew her own mind. It was perfect. The price was substantial, but for me, it was a rounding error on the deal I had just closed. I paid for it without a second thought. Mr. Abernathy, whose gentle eyes had seen a century of love stories pass through his shop, polished the ring carefully. This ring has been waiting a long time for the right hand, my dear, he said, his voice raspy with age. It requires a woman of taste and confidence to wear it. It has chosen well. I slipped the ring on my finger. It felt like it had been made for me. It was a symbol of everything I believed in: history, craftsmanship, beauty, and strength. It was a symbol of the life I was about to build with Julian. I showed it to him that night. He whistled. Wow, Clara, that's certainly unique. Isn't it beautiful? I breathed. admiring the way the sapphire caught the light. It's from the 30s. Can you imagine the stories it could tell? It's very artistic, he said, a strange tightness in his voice that I willfully ignored. You have such interesting taste. I chose to hear the word interesting as a compliment. I chose to see his slight hesitation as awe. I was a successful, intelligent woman who could analyze a company's balance sheet down to the last decimal point. But when it came to the man I loved, I was a fool. I saw what I wanted to see. For the next 6 months, I lived in a state of blissful, ignorant happiness. I wore my beautiful, unique ring with pride. We planned our wedding, a grand affair at his family's country club. Paid for, of course, by me. I saw it as my gift to him, a way of honoring his family's legacy while building our own. He saw it, I now realize, as his due. I loved him. I truly did. I loved his charm, his grace, the way he made me feel like I was part of a world I had only ever read about in books. And I thought he loved me. I thought he loved my strength, my independence, my success. I didn't realize he was only in love with what my success could provide. And I didn't realize that my independence, the very thing I thought he admired, was, to him, a constant, galling reminder of his own inadequacy. The ring on my finger wasn't a symbol of our partnership. It was a daily reminder that I didn't need him, and he was beginning to hate it, and me. The first cracks in our perfect modern partnership began to show about 3 months before the wedding. They were small, hairline fractures at first, the kind you could ignore if you tried hard enough. And I tried very, very hard. It started with money, my money. He began making little jokes about it in front of our friends. We'd be out at a nice dinner, and when the check came, he'd laugh and say, "Don't worry, Clara's got it. She's the one with the Midas touch." Our friends would chuckle, and I'd smile along, but a small, cold knot would tighten in my stomach. It wasn't a joke. It was a subtle repositioning, casting me as the provider and him as the charming freeloader. He was using my success as a punchline to mask his own insecurity. Then came the little critiques of my taste. I had bought a beautiful, abstract painting from an emerging artist for our living room. I loved it. It was bold and vibrant. Julian stared at it for a long time before pronouncing his verdict. "It's very colorful," he'd said. "My family always preferred landscapes, from established artists." The subtext was always the same. His family, his background, his taste, that was the gold standard. Mine was new money. It was interesting. It was artistic. It was never, ever, right. I was a venture capitalist. I could sit across from a cocky 20-something tech CEO and dissect his flawed business model in minutes. I could manage a $100 million fund with a cool head and a steady hand. But in my own home, with the man I loved, I was a coward. I didn't want to cause a fight. I didn't want to admit that the perfect partnership I'd been so proud of was built on a shaky foundation. So I ignored the cracks. I papered over them with love and denial. The earthquake that shattered it all came on a rainy Tuesday night. It wasn't even about anything important. It was about hors d'oeuvres. We were finalizing the catering for the wedding. I was on the phone with the caterer, making a decisive, practical choice. No, the bacon-wrapped dates are a bit dated. I was saying, let's go with the Ahai tuna tartar on wonton crisps instead. It's cleaner, more modern. Julian, who had been listening from the other room, walked in as I hung up the phone. His face was a thundercloud. "Must be nice," he said, his voice dripping with a sarcasm I had never heard from him before. "What must be nice?" I asked, confused. "To just make all the decisions," he snapped. "To just be the one in charge of everything, the food, the venue, the finances. Do I even get a say in my own wedding? Or are you just going to handle it all, since you're the one paying for it?" The attack was so sudden, so vicious, that it took my breath away. "That's not fair." "Julian," I said, "I'm just trying to help. You know I'm better at this stuff, at the logistics. Better at it, or just better at being in control," he sneered. "You walk around like you're the CEO of this relationship. Clara, you bought your own ring, for God's sake. What kind of man does that make me look like?" "It makes you look like a modern man in an equal partnership," I shot back, my own anger finally flaring. It was supposed to be a symbol of that, of us. He let out a short, ugly, humorless laugh. "A partnership don't make me laugh." He walked over to me, his handsome face twisted with a resentment so ugly it was like I was seeing him for the first time. He pointed a shaking finger at my left hand, at the beautiful, unique ring I had chosen with such love. "You want to know the real problem, Clara," he hissed. "You want to know why this isn't working? It's that. Have you ever had a moment where someone you love says one single thing? A thing so cruel and so revealing that your entire perception of them shatters instantly. It's like a switch flips in your brain, and you can never, ever go back. That pathetic little ring you're so proud of," he spat. The word pathetic dripping with years of stored-up venom. It's a joke. It's a sad, little, artsy-fartsy piece of junk. My mother's engagement ring, a proper ring, from a proper family, could swallow that thing whole. It's an embarrassment. I am embarrassed to be seen with it. I am embarrassed to be seen with you. Pathetic. The word hung in the air between us, a toxic cloud. He hadn't just insulted the ring. He had insulted me, my taste, my success, my background, my entire identity. He had taken the very symbol of our modern partnership and revealed it for what it was in his eyes, a pathetic reminder that I was the one with the power. And he hated me for it. The love I had felt for him, so vast and all-encompassing just moments before, simply evaporated. It vanished. In its place was a profound, shocking, and ice-cold clarity. I was seeing him, truly seeing him, for the first time, and what I saw was a weak, insecure, cruel little boy, hiding in the skin of a charming man. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't even raise my voice. The venture capitalist in my brain, the part that knows when a deal is dead, took over. With a hand that was perfectly steady, I twisted the beautiful Art Deco ring off my finger. The ring Mr. Abernathy had said was waiting for a woman of confidence. I had been that woman, and I would be again. I placed it gently on the coffee table between us. The sapphire glowed. Even in the dim light, it was still beautiful. It wasn't the ring that was pathetic. It was the man who couldn't see its worth. "Well," I said, my voice quiet, calm and utterly final. "That's a good thing, then, because you'll never have to be embarrassed by it, or by me, ever again." I looked him right in the eye. "We're done, Julian. The merger is off." I turned and walked to our bedroom. My bedroom, and I closed the door, leaving him standing there with the beautiful, pathetic ring and the ruins of the life he had just destroyed. The days after Julian left were a strange, hollow echo. I moved through our, now my apartment, with a methodical precision, dismantling the life we were supposed to build together. I canceled the caterer. I canceled the venue. I called 300 wedding guests, one by one, and endured their shocked silence and pitying condolences. Each task was a small, sharp paper cut on a wound that was still wide open. But the ring was different. It sat on my dresser in its velvet box, a tiny, glittering monument to my own foolishness. I couldn't look at it. It wasn't a symbol of love anymore. It was a symbol of my failure to see the man I was with. It was the physical embodiment of his final, cruel word, pathetic. I knew I had to get rid of it. I couldn't sell it online. The memory was too painful. I had to take it back to the one place it had ever felt truly at home. I had to take it back to Heirloom Jewels. Walking back into Mr. Abernathy's little shop was like stepping into a memory. The same gentle bell chimed above the door. The same scent of old velvet and silver polish filled the air. And the same kind. Elderly man looked up from behind his workbench, his eyes crinkling into a warm smile when he saw me. "Clara, my dear," he said, his voice a happy, raspy sound. "How wonderful to see you. Here to pick up the wedding bands. I imagine they're all ready for you." My heart just broke all over again. I had completely forgotten about the wedding bands we had ordered. I walked to the counter, my throat tight. "Actually, Mr. Abernathy," I started, my voice barely a whisper. There's been a change of plans. The wedding is off." I watched the warm smile fade from his face, replaced by a look of deep, genuine concern and sadness. He had seen a lifetime of love stories, and he knew a tragedy when he saw one. He didn't ask probing questions. He didn't pry. "Oh, my child," he said softly. "I am so very sorry to hear that." He came around the counter, took one of my hands in his own warm, wrinkled ones, and said, "Come, sit." Let me make you a cup of tea. I spent the next hour in his small, cluttered back office, sipping chamomile tea from a delicate china cup, and I told him everything, not the ugly details of the fight, but just the simple, sad fact that the man I thought I was marrying was not the man he turned out to be. Mr. Abernathy just listened, his head nodding in quiet understanding. Finally, I took a deep breath and slid the velvet box across his desk. I need to return the ring, I said, the words feeling like shards of glass in my mouth. He opened the box and looked at the beautiful Art Deco ring, the sapphire glowing under the lamplight. It's a shame, he murmured. This ring has a happy soul. It does not deserve to be part of a sad story. He shuffled over to his old, brass cash register. Now, my dear, given the value of the piece, a cash refund is, I'm afraid, against our store policy. But of course, you will receive the full amount in store credit. He scribbled on a receipt pad with a shaky but elegant hand and slid the slip of paper across the desk to me. I looked at it, a massive number, followed by the words, store credit, heirloom jewels. It was a fortune, but a fortune I could only spend in this one. Small, sad room. I'm afraid my own story is a bit of a sad one these days, too, Mr. Abernathy said, with a heavy sigh, sinking back into his chair. What do you mean? I asked. He looked around his shop, at the dusty display cases filled with a century of treasures, and his eyes were filled with a profound grief. Heirloom Jewels has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather opened it in 1922. My father took over after him, and then me. But my children, they are not jewelers. They are doctors and lawyers. They have no interest in this dusty old place. He rubbed his tired eyes. Business is not what it used to be. The big chain stores. The internet. It's hard for a small place like this to survive. I am in a great deal of debt. I have no choice. I am selling. Oh, Mr. Abernathy, no, I said. My own heartbreak momentarily forgotten. Yes, he said, his voice heavy. I received an offer from a large corporation. Sterling & Co. Jewelers. You know them. I knew them. They were the Walmart of jewelry. They bought up small, historic stores like this, gutted them, and turned them into soulless, brightly lit showrooms selling mass-produced diamond rings. They will clear my debts, he continued, a look of defeat on his face. But they will destroy my family's legacy. They will melt down all these unique, beautiful pieces for the gold and the stones. They will fire my staff. Another 100 years of history, gone. But I have no choice. I signed the papers next week. I sat there, in the quiet, dusty office, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I looked at the heartbroken old man in front of me. I looked at the slip of paper in my hand, a massive amount of capital, tied inextricably to this one, beautiful, dying store. And then, something inside my brain clicked. I was a venture capitalist. My job was to see value where others saw failure. My job was to analyze broken systems and find a way to fix them. My ex-fiancé thought I was grieving, and I was. But as I looked around that store, the heartbroken woman inside me went quiet for a second, and the VC took over. This business isn't failing because its product is bad, she whispered in my head. The inventory is priceless. The brand reputation is impeccable. The owner is a master of his craft. It's failing because its business model is 50 years out of date. It has no online presence, no modern marketing, no efficient inventory system. It's an undervalued asset with incredible turnaround potential. The idea that sparked in my mind was so audacious, so completely insane, that I almost laughed out loud. Julian had called my ring pathetic, a sad little artsy-fartsy piece of junk, and I was now holding a store credit receipt from that pathetic ring that was worth more than his yearly salary. And I was about to use it. I looked up from the credit slip, my eyes sharp and focused. I looked at the kind, defeated old man who was about to lose his own dream. Mr. Abernathy, I said, my voice suddenly clear and full of a purpose I hadn't felt in months. You said you signed the papers with the corporation next week. Yes, he said sadly, on Friday. Don't sign them, I said. Give me until Thursday. I have a counteroffer to prepare. He stared at me, his eyes wide with confusion. A counteroffer? My dear, what are you talking about? I just smiled, a real smile this time. a sharp, predatory, venture capitalist smile. I'm not just a customer with a store credit. Mr. Abernathy, I said. I'm an investor, and I think I'd like to acquire your company. Mr. Abernathy stared at me from across his cluttered desk, his kind eyes wide with a mixture of shock and utter bewilderment. Acquire my company, he repeated, the words sounding foreign and absurd in the dusty little room. My dear girl, I think your grief has confused you. This is a failing business. It is drowning in debt. It is not something one acquires. It is something one escapes. With all due respect, sir, I said. And the venture capitalist inside me took over completely, my voice becoming clear and confident. You see a failing business. I see a deeply undervalued asset with a legendary brand name and a priceless, mismanaged inventory. They are not the same thing. He just kept staring at me. The corporation that wants to buy you, I continued, leaning forward. They don't see the value. They just want to liquidate your assets and slap their name on your door. They're buying a carcass. I want to buy the soul. I looked him right in the eye. You told me you signed the papers on Friday. That gives me 4 days before you sell your family's soul to a corporate devil. At least let me do my due diligence. Let me see your books. Let me see everything. What do you have to lose? He was silent for a long time, looking at me. This strange, heartbroken young woman who was suddenly talking to him about assets and due diligence. Then, he gave a small, weary shrug. The books are a mess, he said with a sigh. But you are right. I have nothing left to lose. He gestured to the piles of ledgers and shoeboxes full of receipts in the corner. Be my guest. My ex-fiancé, Julian, probably imagined I spent that week at home, crying into a pint of ice cream, watching sad movies. He would have been partially right about the crying part, but he would have been wrong about the rest. I wasn't watching movies. I was analyzing balance sheets. I wasn't grieving my failed romance. I was falling in love with a new business venture. I turned the back office of Heirloom Jewels into my war room. I sent Liam a single, curt text. I'm moving out. I'll have my things by the end of the week. Then I turned off my phone and I got to work. For 4 days, I lived and breathed the 75-year history of a failing jewelry store. Mr. Abernathy was right. The books were a disaster. Decades of handwritten ledgers, faded ink on brittle paper, receipts stuffed into shoeboxes. It was a chaotic, disorganized mess. But I was a woman who saw patterns in chaos for a living. I spent 72 hours fueled by coffee and a burning, righteous anger, inputting every number into a spreadsheet, building a financial model from scratch. And as I worked, a story began to emerge. The problems were obvious. The store had virtually zero marketing budget. It had no website, no social media, no digital inventory. It was a business stuck in the past, slowly being choked to death by the modern world. But the strengths were magnificent. They were the hidden treasures that the corporate vultures had completely missed in their own due diligence. The first was the inventory. I started cross-referencing the faded descriptions in the ledgers with my own knowledge of antique jewelry. The old diamond brooch I found in a dusty display case wasn't just a brooch. It was an original, signed Cartier piece from the 1920s. The gaudy sapphire necklace was a rare, Art Nouveau masterpiece by Lalique. The store was a treasure trove of priceless, one-of-a-kind vintage pieces that Mr. Abernathy, bless his heart, had been valuing at little more than their weight in gold. He was practically giving them away. The second treasure was the client list. I found his old, leather-bound ledgers of custom orders from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The names were a who's who of the city's founding families. The Vanderbilts, the Astors, the Carnegies of our city. These weren't just customers. They were generations of old money families who had trusted Heirloom Jewels to create their most important pieces. This store didn't just have customers. It had a pedigree, a legacy that was priceless. The corporation saw a failing business. I saw a legendary brand with a world-class, undervalued inventory and a built-in, high-net-worth clientele. My grief for my broken engagement was still there, a dull ache in the background, but it was being overshadowed by the exhilarating, intoxicating thrill of the hunt. The venture capitalist in me was alive and roaring. I had just found the deal of a lifetime, hidden in the ruins of my own personal tragedy. On Thursday morning, my plan was complete. I had a 30-page business proposal, complete with a 5-year financial projection, a detailed marketing and e-commerce strategy, and a plan for a capital injection that would clear the store's debts and fund a full-scale modernization. I showered and changed in the store's tiny bathroom, swapping my sweatpants and grief-stricken stupor for a sharp, tailored suit and a coat of red lipstick. It was my armor. I called Mr. Abernathy and asked him to meet me in the office. I laid my proposal out on the desk in front of him. "What is this?" he asked, confused. "That," I said, "is my counteroffer." He put on his reading glasses and began to read. I watched as he went through the pages, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, to dawning comprehension. He looked at my financial projections, at my plan to build an online presence, at my strategy to rebrand the store as the city's premier destination for rare and vintage fine jewelry. "My dear," he said, his voice trembling slightly when he finished, This is brilliant. It is what your grandfather would have done, but where would the money come from? This requires a significant investment." I pushed the store credit receipt, the one from my pathetic ring, across the desk. Then I pushed my own personal bank statement next to it, showing a balance that made his eyes go wide. "The store credit is my equity down payment," I explained. "And I will personally provide the capital to clear your existing debts and fund the first 2 years of operations. In exchange," I said, my voice firm, "I want a controlling interest in the company, 70%. You retain 30% and stay on as a salaried consultant and our master jeweler. We use your family's name and legacy, and my business acumen, and we build a new empire together." He just stared at me, speechless. "The corporation wants to buy your history so they can destroy it," I said softly. "I want to buy your history so I can preserve it and make it wildly profitable." He looked at my proposal. He looked at the receipt for the ring. He looked at me, at the determined woman in the power suit who had walked in a week ago as a heartbroken girl. "They are coming with the papers tomorrow morning at 10, he whispered. "Then you have until 9 a.m. to make your decision," I said. "You can sell your family's soul to them, or you can sell its future to me." I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out of the store, leaving him there with my proposal. The ball was in his court. I had turned my greatest humiliation into my greatest professional pitch, and I had a feeling my life was about to change forever. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my quiet apartment, a pot of strong, black coffee my only companion. And I waited. My entire future, this wild, audacious, and slightly unhinged plan, rested on the decision of a kind, elderly man I had known for less than a week. My phone sat on the table, a silent black rectangle holding my fate. The 9 a.m. deadline I had given Mr. Abernathy felt like a ticking time bomb. At 8:59 a.m., the phone rang. My heart leaped into my throat. I snatched it up. "Hello, Ms. Vance Clara." It was Mr. Abernathy. His voice was no longer the defeated, weary sound of a man resigned to his fate. It was shaky, yes, but underneath, there was a tremor of something I hadn't heard before: hope. "I'm here, Mr. Abernathy," I said, my own voice tight with tension. "I have read your proposal 4 times, he said. "I did not sleep either. I have been looking at my grandfather's photograph all night, asking him what I should do." He paused. He was a gambler. "You know, he risked everything to open this store in 1922. He would have liked you. You have the heart of an artist, but the mind of a shark." I smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." "As you should," he said. "I have made my decision, my dear. I will not be selling my family's soul to the corporation. I would be honored to sell its future to you." A wave of pure, triumphant relief washed over me, so powerful it almost buckled my knees. "Thank you, Mr. Abernathy," I breathed. "You won't regret this." "I know," he said. "The men from Sterling & Co. are due here at 10 o'clock with their final papers. I think it would be best if you were here." "I'm already on my way," I said. When I walked into Heirloom Jewels at 9:45 a.m., I wasn't alone. I was flanked by Marcus Thorne, the sharpest corporate lawyer in the city. Mr. Abernathy greeted me with tears in his eyes. Clasping both of my hands in his, I feel like I have been given a second chance, he whispered. We both have, I whispered back. At precisely 10 o'clock, two men in identical, expensive-looking gray suits walked into the store. They exuded an air of smug corporate confidence. They were here to close a deal. A simple acquisition of a failing asset. Abernathy, the lead suit said, not unkindly. Good to see you. We have the final documents here for you to sign. Our offer is, as you know, very generous. Thank you for coming, gentlemen, Mr. Abernathy said, his voice surprisingly firm. I stood beside him, a silent partner. But I'm afraid I will not be signing your papers today. I have decided to accept a different offer. The two lawyers looked at each other, then at us. A flicker of annoyance crossed the lead lawyer's face. He looked at me, this young woman in a sharp blazer standing next to the old man. And he dismissed me completely. A different offer, he asked with a condescending chuckle. From whom did your granddaughter decide she wanted to take over the family business after all? Marcus Thorne stepped forward. My client, Miss Clara Vance, he said, his voice as cold and sharp as a diamond edge, has made Mr. Abernathy a binding offer to acquire a 70% controlling interest in a new, recapitalized corporation. Heirloom Jewels by Clara. The offer includes a full clearing of all existing business debts and a generous salary and consultancy package for Mr. Abernathy to remain as our master jeweler. He paused, letting the information sink in. I believe, Marcus continued, a predatory smile on his face, that our offer is substantially better than yours. Yours buys a building to gut it. Ours buys a legacy to rebuild it. The corporate lawyers were speechless. They just stared at me, their smug confidence evaporating. They had been outmaneuvered, their simple, brutish deal completely sideswiped by a sophisticated acquisition they had never seen coming. Now, Marcus said, unless you are prepared to counter with an offer that includes preserving the brand's integrity and retaining Mr. Abernathy on a 7-figure consultation contract, I suggest you wish us a good day. They didn't have a counteroffer. They packed up their expensive leather briefcases, their faces a mask of fury and humiliation, and they stormed out of the little shop without another word. When the door chimed shut behind them, the three of us, me, Mr. Abernathy, and Marcus let out a collective whoop of triumph. The rest of the morning was spent signing the mountain of paperwork that would make the deal official. Marcus laid the final signature page on the desk in the small back office. The incorporation documents for the new company. Here we are, he said. Sign here. And you are officially the majority owner and CEO of Heirloom Jewels by Clara. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I thought of Julian's sneering face as he called my ring. The ring from this very store. Pathetic. A symbol of my supposedly tacky, new money taste. And I smiled, because that pathetic ring had just become the down payment on my new empire. Its value was now the seed capital for a multi-million-dollar company, my company. I signed my name, Clara Vance. Then Mr. Abernathy signed his own, passing the torch of his family's legacy into my hands. His eyes were full of tears, but this time, they were tears of joy. It's done, Marcus said, gathering the papers. Congratulations, Madam CEO. And just like that, it was real. The store wasn't just a project anymore, it was mine. If that's not the ultimate upgrade, I don't know what is. After Marcus left, Mr. Abernathy walked over to an old safe in the corner of the office. He came back with a large, brass ring holding a collection of antique, ornate keys. He pressed them into my hand. Their weight was substantial. Real? She's all yours now, my dear, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Take care of her. I will, I promised. I stood in the main showroom of my new store, the keys clutched in my hand. The place was quiet, dusty, and full of ghosts and memories. But now, it was also full of potential, full of a future I was going to build myself. I was no longer a grieving fiancé. I was no longer a customer. I was the owner. And I couldn't wait to get to work. The 6 months that followed the signing were a whirlwind of controlled, joyous chaos. My grief was still present, a quiet passenger in my life, but it no longer had its hands on the steering wheel. I was driven now by a new, all-consuming passion, the rebirth of Heirloom Jewels. I didn't gut the store, as the corporation would have done. I restored it. I treated the space like one of its own precious antiques. We stripped away the dingy, modern carpeting to reveal the original. Wide plank hardwood floors. We polished the old mahogany and glass display cases until they gleamed. We installed state-of-the-art lighting that made the vintage gems sparkle with an inner fire. It was a perfect fusion of old-world history and modern luxury. My venture capital brain went into overdrive. I hired a brilliant young team to build a stunning e-commerce website, with each piece of jewelry professionally photographed and accompanied by a detailed history of its provenance. Our social media wasn't about flashy sales. It was about storytelling. We told the stories of the Art Deco period, the history of a particular gemstone cut, the life of the woman who first owned a particular locket. The store, once a dusty relic, became a sensation. It turned out there were a lot of people in the world who were tired of mass-produced jewelry and were hungry for something with a soul. We were featured in Vogue, in town and country. We became the go-to destination for those seeking something unique, something with a story. We were wildly, unbelievably profitable. To celebrate, and to officially reintroduce the store to the city, I decided to host a grand reopening party. The guest list was a carefully curated mix of the city's old money families, whose parents had been Mr. Abernathy's original clients, and the new money tech entrepreneurs and artists who represented the city's future. The party was the talk of the town. I stood near the entrance of my beautiful, buzzing store, a glass of champagne in my hand, my heart full. I was wearing a simple, elegant black dress and one of the store's most beautiful pieces, a vintage sapphire necklace that glittered under the new lights. I was no longer the heartbroken woman who had stumbled in here months ago. I was the CEO of a thriving business. I was a success story. Mr. Abernathy was there, looking 10 years younger in a sharp new suit, holding court by the diamond display and regaling guests with stories of his grandfather. He was happy. His family's legacy was safe. Then, through the crowded room, I saw him, Julian, my ex-fiancé. He hadn't been invited. He stood near the doorway, a beautiful, much younger woman on his arm, looking around the room with a familiar, critical air. He was a man who couldn't stand to not be at the most important party in the city. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that he had come here to see me, to show off his new girlfriend, and to perhaps deliver one final, condescending blow. He saw me across the room, and a smug, cruel smile touched his lips. He started to make his way through the crowd toward me, but before he could reach me, the city's mayor, a wonderful, powerful woman who had become one of my best customers, took me by the arm. "Clara, my dear," she said, her voice booming. "Congratulations, I have never seen such a brilliant turnaround. You have taken a beloved city institution and turned it into the most exciting brand in the country. Your eye for value, for beauty. It's a gift. You are a gift to this city." As she was speaking, Julian finally reached us. He had clearly overheard the mayor's gushing praise. The smug smile on his face faltered, replaced by a look of utter confusion. He looked at me, at the mayor, back at me. He couldn't connect the dots. "Mayor," I said, smiling warmly, "thank you so much for coming. That means the world to me." "Wouldn't miss it," she said. "Now, I want to talk to you about that Georgian ring I saw on your website." She gave my arm a squeeze and moved off toward the display case. Now, it was just me and Julian. He stood there, his new girlfriend looking bored beside him, his mind clearly reeling. "Clara," he started, his voice a little unsteady. "Wonderful party. I'm surprised to see you here. I didn't realize this was your sort of crowd." It was the condescending line he had been preparing all night. "What a strange thing to say," I said, taking a cool sip of my champagne, seeing as it's my party. He just stared at me. "Your party?" "Yes," I said, my smile serene, my voice a blade of pure, polite ice. "My store, my renovation, my guest list. I own the place." I watched his face as the final pieces clicked into place in his mind. The store, the ring I had returned, the massive store credit. The realization of what I had done dawned on his face, followed by a wave of pure, horrified, public humiliation. His face went white, then a splotchy, ugly red. He looked at me, this woman he had called pathetic. Now the celebrated owner of the hottest brand in the city, a success story he could never dream of achieving. He had come here to gloat, and he had stumbled into my coronation. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing to say. I had won, not just by living well, but by building a better business. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, giving him a final, dismissive nod. I have guests to attend to. I turned my back on him and walked away, leaving him standing there, a ghost from a past that no longer had any power over me. He called my ring pathetic because he was a man who understood the price of everything and the value of nothing. He couldn't see the story, the soul, the history in that beautiful piece of jewelry. And in the end, that's what he couldn't see in me, either. So I took that pathetic ring, that symbol of his rejection, and I used it to build a world where things with history and soul and a real story are the most valuable things of all. He tried to take away my happily ever after, so I went out and built my own damn castle. And I am the queen. Thank you for listening. If you've ever turned someone's insult into your greatest motivation, tell me all about it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and never, ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. You're priceless. I'll see you next time.